Welcome back to Energy 101. Today we have Brandon all the way from Colorado. He's with Flatirons Chemicals. Shout out Flatirons. Beautiful. Love Colorado. Love North Dakota. Love Houston. We're going to talk about all three places. And most importantly, we're going to talk about chemicals. Chemicals are a huge industry that is incorporated into oil and gas in several ways. And we're going to finally learn about it today. Brandon, how are chemicals involved in oil and gas? I mean, I could say energy in general, but that sounds like a laundry list. So let's maybe just get niche right into it.
Yeah. So chemicals are literally everything. Like for a while, I was a little self-conscious about having chemicals in the name of our company because people read that and don't know about chemicals. They're like, oh, that's a chemical guy. Stay away. But literally they're everything. Like the big thing during COVID was hand sanitizer. Well, that's chemical. I mean, literally everything that we do, cleaning hospitals, all these different type of sanitation things are all chemicals. So chemicals are important in every industry, but especially in the oil and gas industry. I mean, they basically increase production on wells. They optimize completions on wells. They help drilling, they FRs and stuff like that help you pump more fluid and more proppant. They clean up your wells. They increase the fluidity of your piping, reduce downtime, save a tremendous amount of money, from a workover rig standpoint and doing maintenance on your well. It's kind of cheap insurance, as we like to call it. So they are of utmost importance. I mean, they say that in 2032, the oil and gas chemical industry will be $100 billion industry.
That's wild.
And that's worldwide, but I mean, that's a pretty significant number. So it just kind of shows the importance of it. And I think that in the last few years, people have really emphasized even more so the importance of the chemical industry, which is why, I mean, production is going to increase, fivefold in the next 5 years, but people are like, well, we want to optimize our production on our wells. And so let's spend a little bit more money on our chemical program to allow us to, again, produce more, lower expenses, increase runtime, all these different things.
Damn. So it's literally the unsung hero. I mean, throw it in there with just water, sand, like literally essential, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my personal opinion, it's one of the most important things about your well production. I mean, you talk to any production engineer, and although when you're negotiating pricing in a contract with them, they don't put as strong of an emphasis on it because they're business people too, right? But it's seldom that you find a producer that doesn't have any chemical program or a significant, robust chemical program. A lot of companies in 2020 actually, just with when oil dropped below $0 a barrel, they tried to eliminate their chemical program completely because they're like, this is a significant cost and we need to do everything that we can to maintain these wells and keep them producing and not bury our company. And they quickly found out that that was a little bit of a slippery slope. And so now there's an even stronger emphasis on their chemical program.
That's really cool. I have a bunch of questions, but before we get into that, how did you get into chemicals?
Yeah. Random story. So basically, I was in construction for the majority of my life. Started working at a young age, and my uncle owned a construction company, so worked for him. We did, finished basements and remodeled bathrooms and kitchens and pop tops and did some custom home building. And as my uncle was a GC for this investor that was basically investing into these custom homes, I had worked for my uncle and met this guy, Ed Aback, through my uncle, and my uncle and I went to Ed's cabin in Nebraska to do some tile work. And I'd known Ed and known about his success in the oil and gas industry. And I'm like, sure, that sounds great. Kind of a working vacation. We were going to lay tile during the day and then, have fun, play pool and, have a couple drinks at night. I'm like, that sounds great. I'd like to pick this guy's brain and see how he got to where he is. So we went out there, did tile, and over the weekend, this guy Ed was asking me a bunch of questions. I'm like, what is this guy's deal? Like, I get that he wants to get to know me and he's being friendly, and this guy's like, do I have to submit a blood sample here? Like, what's this guy's deal? Well, anyways, at the end of the weekend, he's like, so we're starting another oil and gas company, and we're looking for a kind of young, motivated guy with a good head on his shoulders and is teachable, and you seem like you fit the bill. Would you like to move to North Dakota, leave everything behind, and help us start this company? And I first was like, North Dakota, that sounds intriguing, minus 50 degrees in the winter and leave everything behind that I knew in Colorado. And then I was like, well, this guy, he was a senior vice president at a company called Western Gas Resources. And Western Gas was a very successful company. They sold for several $1 billion.
Amazing.
I'm like, this is kind of an opportunity of a lifetime. Like the construction thing, I like it. I like working with my hands and that sort of thing, but I don't own the company, and like, what's the next step for me? What's the opportunity? So about 6 months later, I moved to Williston, North Dakota, and literally like dove head first.
Had you seen Williston before you moved?
No.
I've never been to Williston, but I've just heard it's nothing.
Don't talk shit about ND right now.
No, it's like, is it kind of the same as Midland? That's what I mean,
yeah, but the outskirts is beautiful. Like the Badlands,
There's actually,
the geography and the landscape is why I have visited personally as like a tourist.
You
like
went to Williston?
You fly into Williston usually, or Dickinson.
Williston or Minot or Dickinson. I mean, there's a number of different airports.
I flew into Dickinson. We've mentioned the Bakken a few times, and I haven't yet said this, but I think it was Dickinson. And the airport is like super tiny. And when you get your luggage, like a checked bag, you go up to like just like a corner of a room, and it's like a conveyor belt that's the size of this table, and it just goes from here to there, and then there's a little drape window right there that they shove the suitcases through, and they're just outside. The plane's right there. It's like plane outside, shoving your luggage right here, and that's your baggage claim. And I was like, this is so charming.
Yeah, it's so cute.
So Williston has stepped their game up. They actually have a new airport with 4 different gates. So yeah, big time. You actually have like what's the tunnel thing that you walk down to get onto the airplane? Right. Versus like walking outside in the blistering cold and like walking on snow's blowing sideways and you're getting on the plane that way. So they're coming up in the game.
How old were you at this time that you moved?
So I was 20. I was about 30.
Okay.
31, I think, 2013. So at that time, actually, and your audience probably knows that's familiar with the Bakken, that was like it was coming over the hump of like the big oil boom up there. So I'm driving up there and I literally see people staying in tents on the side of the road. And I'm not kidding, like left everything behind because they knew that there was an opportunity in the oil field that they never would have, growing up on the farm or the ranch that they're, whatever.
That's literally the Spindletop story.
It was wild.
It gives me chills.
Yeah. I mean, just like imagine, you think of, like people coming over from my family from Scotland, and my grandpa essentially did that same thing. Like grew up working in a mine, started working in the mine when he was 12 years old. His dad ran the mine. And he was like, I need a better life for my family. He had gotten married at that time, and he had my mom, which was, well, when he first came over, I think my mom was just born. And he's like, I have a family now. I need to support them. Came over here, basically built a new life from Scotland. My mom was 1 year old when my grandmother and mom came over here. My grandma tells a story quick, and not to go on a tangent here, but she was so upset and so terrified, had a 1 year old daughter going in a brand new country, didn't have any idea what they were going to do. And she is from Scotland, so she likes tea. And she didn't have any American money, and so she couldn't buy a cup of tea. And so this nice lady, this janitor lady at the airport in New York, offered her whatever cents to buy a cup of tea. And she's like, I feel so comfortable now because this person that didn't know me from Adam just offered me this money to buy this cup of tea. So anyways, just left everything behind to start a new life for their family. It's pretty inspiring.
Super inspiring.
People that did that. So
yeah. Do you think that kind of helped make your decision?
I didn't really realize what was going on when I first got up there, but in the first few months, I really realized that this is a great opportunity for me that I wouldn't have had in the past. But at that time, I was literally just being force-fed information to try to learn as much as I could in a short amount of time to have some sort of impact and provide value to the guy that didn't really know me all that well and gave me an opportunity. So, it was
I'd like to kind of dive into, you're diving into a new industry. Where did you go about learning everything? How did you learn about chemicals? How did you learn the importance of them? How did you where did you turn?
So, this guy, Ed Aback that I mentioned, he's just knows a lot about a lot, especially in the industry. He had been in the industry at that point for, 40 years. And so he was definitely a strong mentor of mine that taught me a lot about what we were specifically doing, which was treating water flood wells at the time. But the internet is a powerful tool, right? A lot of the guys that were up there were going to the bars and partying and all this stuff because they had more money than they ever thought they would ever have. I worked during the day, went home, basically got on my phone or on my laptop and studied as much as I possibly could. I actually met a rancher out there that ended up becoming friends with. I bought a horse from him and trained the horse when I was up there. And that's what I did. I worked during the day, I studied, and then I trained my horse. And
were you running the company?
No. So I started as a field technician.
Okay.
So literally bottom rung, learn as much as you can.
From the ground
and
up.
The more you learn, the more opportunity we'll give you type of thing. And obviously that was dependent on how the company grew and the different opportunities that presented themselves. Just literally like tried to be a sponge and soak in as much as I possibly could.
That's awesome.
I love the, it's like so humble. It's like you like a new town, you have a horse, like, and then like you got the job because like a guy like literally saw you and was like, you try and care, you're hired. Like it sounds like something like you'd hear decades ago and not like nothing new age, just like tried and true, traditional. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, forever grateful for the opportunity. It's been tremendous. I mean, this industry, as you guys know, you met a lot of people, is a huge industry, but it seems so small because everyone knows everybody. We've had meetings here in Houston over the last couple of days, and one of my technical sales engineers is going into these labs, and it's like, we used to work together 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I mean, it's just incredible how like tight knit community is. A lot of people look out for each other and again, are willing to take you under their wing and teach you. And, there's not a whole lot of industries, at least that I'm familiar with, that are like that. So definitely fortunate to be in the industry and been presented the opportunities that we have.
I agree. I think everyone's always willing to help out and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
This mentor guy, his name is Ed.
Yep.
Is he still around?
Yep.
We're gonna have to get this guy on. He sounds like a Bob Barbet type,
Yeah.
Like you said, 40 years. It's probably more now at this point, right?
Yeah. I honestly don't know how long he's been in the industry, but actually Ed's story is incredible as well. He grew up in like northern Alberta, somewhere in northern Canada.
Of course.
No electricity. They farmed and, raised crops, and I think they had some cows and just when people say they grew up with no electricity, it's like, I
What?
just can't
Yeah.
imagine, like we're so fortunate with everything that we have, all the amenities. And it's like, you literally didn't have running water
Right.
or electricity. Like, I don't know.
Like I
how
can't
that
imagine life without Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Much less electricity.
Yeah. But yeah, Ed's an incredible guy, very well known and well respected in the industry, mostly on the midstream side. I think Ed's built 50 gas plants in his career, something like that, all over. And yeah, he's it's the kind of guy that is very respected, very successful, but you would never know. He drove like this 2007 Chevy pickup for the first basically 10 years that I knew him. And this thing was like it had 400,000+ miles on it. I think it has almost 500,000 now. Just as humble as the day's long, and willing to teach you anything that you're willing to learn. So yeah, great guy.
Is he connected to Flatirons?
Yep. So he's one of the investment in the investment group. He's the managing director for Flatirons Field Services, which is our parent company. So under Flatirons Field Services, we have a gas plant up in Williston. We have a Flatirons Midstream, and then we have we do gas gathering, gas processing, and gas lift, and then the chemicals group, which is kind of random that it was thrown in the mix. But our investors had some assets in North Dakota and needed solutions. They were ineffectively treating the frack water, so introducing bacteria and souring the wells. They were flaring a lot of the gas that was coming from these wells because they didn't have an adequate, gathering and processing system. And so the investors kind of got together and said, we need solutions for these problems. And that's kind of the foundation that Flatirons was built off of, is providing solutions to our customers that they may either have not realized was as big of a problem as it is, or didn't realize that there was different solutions out there that were a little bit out of the box and not what, the traditional oil-filled chemical companies could offer.
Yeah, let's break down some of these specific things, Flatirons and just the industry as a whole, the chemical industry, how they participate and how they solve these solutions. So just kind of list through some of these issues and go into more detail about what chemicals is actually doing.
Can I ask a very high level question? Do you mostly only do chemicals in upstream, or is it midstream as well?
So we do production chemicals and treatments, and then we do frack chemicals as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we go in a timeline from upstream, which is the first thing, getting it out the ground, to midstream, which is refining and going down the pipe. So maybe start with more upstream solutions to midstream.
Yeah. So, there's dozens of chemicals involved in each process, right? And it depends on the basin. It depends on your well conditions. It depends on what type of artificial lift you're running. So on the frack side, which the frack designs are evolving so rapidly, it's, what we were selling 5 years ago is completely obsolete. And so if you're not constantly reinventing the wheel, if you will, and keeping up with staying ahead of the curve, then you'll get left behind. So, they were using crosslink fracks, gelled fracks back 5 years ago. And then new technology came with they were using friction reducers so they can pump higher rates of water, basically. And then they came up with HVFRs, high viscosity friction reducers. So that eliminated the need for the guar chemicals, the gelled chemicals, because they can increase the viscosity in that frac fluid with one product that is mandatory anyways from a friction reducer standpoint. Biocides to effectively treat the frac water so you're not introducing any sort of contamination into your wells. They've got scale inhibitors, they've got corrosion inhibitors, they've got surfactants, demulsifiers, and again, just kind of depends on the well and the area, and is it an oil rich well or is it a gas play? So those are kind of the main ones from a kind of completion chemical standpoint. And then when the well's turned over to production, they've got just a whole gamut of different chemicals for different reasons. Obviously biocides to eliminate the bacteria that may be in the well, or if they're doing like a desalination treatment and injecting fresh water into the well to clear up some of the deposits, then you want to treat that water before it's injected downhole. Scale inhibitors, because just think of like your tap water. If it's hard water, as they call it, and on the sink you've got like white and orange deposits, that's technically called scale. And so the same thing happens downhole with that produced water. So you want to inject a chemical that can basically clear up those deposits and keep your well from flowing cleanly. They've got, corrosion is a big issue. CO2 is a big driver of corrosion. And so they've got corrosion inhibitors. A lot of them like establish a film and protect the wall of your piping or production tubing.
We just did that. We just had a podcast with that.
Okay. Yeah. I just a whole number of different types of products.
How does bacteria affect the well?
Yeah. Let's do this with our hands and be like, okay, this is in, this is out.
Yeah.
Like we're picturing a well. It's like, there's casing, there's pipe. How are things going in? And if it's all clean and drilled out, how is things contaminating?
Yep. So from a biocide standpoint, in many cases, there's bacteria that's present in the actual formation. Okay. So what bacteria does is it can sour the well. It can actually create hydrogen sulfide, H2S.
Oh,
okay.
I didn't know that.
Bacteria can also be a big driver of corrosion. I'm sure your corrosion guy mentioned that as well. So from a biocide standpoint, whether you're using there's many different types of biocides on the market right now, but you basically want to eliminate the bacteria to prevent any major damage to the well or corrosion issues, or, if the well is sour, as they call it, and has H2S present, you can get docked on your gas if you're trying to sell it to the market. The byproduct can gum up your gas processing system. So like we use H2S scavengers upstream of our gas plant, because if it gets into our system, then it fouls up sensors and meters and just a whole number of different things. We run gas compressors. And so if we're using gas to run those compressors and there's H2S in that gas, that presents a number of issues. A lot of like the gas market has a certain spec that you can't exceed from an H2S standpoint. And so you have to basically eliminate or remove the H2S before you can even sell it to the market. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. I never thought bacteria, I've never heard that it causes H2S or any issues in a well. So that's really, really interesting.
So if the oil and gas is deep down in its own pocket,
mm-hmm.
it's uncontaminated. It's been there for millions of years, perfectly fine. Right. But
so there can be some contamination. We call it spores. Okay. Spores are basically a very robust, strong type of bacteria, I guess you could say. And those spores are very resilient. They find bacteria in spore form in the deepest depths of the ocean. And so they're pretty robust. There's a lot of people that don't believe that spores can survive in that high pressure, high temperature environment. But there's a lot of data, a lot of papers that basically prove otherwise.
A new word unlocked. I have not heard that in reference to oil and gas before. So is like drilling and like breaching through all that rock, exposing and making things react and bacteria come to life essentially, or like literally pushing it into the oil. Like how are things actually getting contaminated if, let's say, there is like just like precious oil and gas sitting there untouched, pure? How are we drilling? When we're drilling, it becomes contaminated.
It doesn't necessarily just like become contaminated unless you have an ineffective biocide from your frack water that you're using in your frack fluid. If that isn't properly treated and that has bacteria present in that frack water, then you're introducing that bacteria into your formation during that frack process, right? So, we call cheap biocides like the dump and pray method. Like you don't really know if it's going to work, but you're just kind of checking the box and saying that you pumped a biocide because that's what you were told to do. And it's not really effective because the frack process is so fast and you're pumping water at such a high rate. Then a lot of the cheaper biocides like bleach, I'll throw that one under the bus, doesn't have enough residence time in that water to actually remove the bacteria or kill those bugs. And so if you don't have enough residence time, then you're injecting that bacteria into your well, and that can sour the formation, which has happened in wells like, or formations like the Madison up in North Dakota. Very sour, and it wasn't always sour. So something happened in the process that soured that formation.
Yeah. Basically, I'm looking for like an analogy. And the one I'm thinking of is like surgery. Like you use a scalpel and like an enclosed sanitizer. Everything's like perfect, right? Like the gloves, the hands, the people doing it, whatever, everything's just like pure, ready to go. And like there's essentially a way people are like getting a knife from the kitchen and pouring some vodka on it and they're like, oh, this is good enough, right? I mean, is that a relatively close?
So here's a good analogy of like how you disrupt that bacteria and make it more predominant in the well when it was just kind of sitting there, not causing any problems. Like, are you guys fish?
Fish.
Yeah, so like if you're walking in a stream and you have your waders on and you step on a rock and that water before you stepped on that rock was super clear, just because underneath that rock, no one had stepped on it. It hadn't been disrupted, but you step on that rock and a big kind of ploof of dirt or mud or anything underneath that rock gets kicked up. That's similar to what probably happens when you're actually disrupting that rock during the drilling and completion process.
All right.
Yeah. So is that your analogy?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, of course. So we're, we talk about going in the ground and out the ground. What other next steps and still, if we're still in the upstream sector, do chemicals have involvement with?
So that's more or less what part of the upstream set. Well, I'll go back to the high viscous fluid. Okay. So now, especially they're pumping such high rates of proppant sand, that when they pump that in there and jam that sand into those fractures that they've completed, during the wireline process, you want to prop open those fractures, right? So you pump a bunch of sand in there to help prop open that fracture. That way, when the weight of the earth literally sets back down, there's still some porosity in that rock through that sand. So when they turn that well onto production, it produces more oil and gas. So the high viscosity, the thick fluid helps to keep that proppant in place for long enough to where the pressure of the earth sits back down on those fractures and it's still propped open. And then after a certain period of time, we have a product called liquid gel breaker. And so you basically reduce the viscosity then of that gel. That way, when you turn the well on to production, there's not a bunch of thick fluid that's impeding the production coming from your well.
So it's kind of like a middleman.
Kind of like a middleman. Yeah, but just holds that proppant in place for long enough so the proppant can do its job.
Do y'all provide proppants as well, or is it like, is a proppant company working with y'all? And like they have to hire multiple service companies to...
Yeah, so like the pressure pumping companies typically sources the various products separately. So like we never really work with a proppant company per se directly. But sand is a very big piece of the puzzle. Honestly, probably more important than chemicals in some ways. So after you've completed the well, you basically drill out the plugs and turn the well on to production, which, by the way, you probably have heard that that's the most dangerous part of this whole process, because you can imagine that well is sitting under pressure for long after it's been fracked, that it's sitting under so much pressure, and that production is basically looking for an exit, that process is quite dangerous.
Do they have to open it slowly, or like how do you kind of mitigate the kick?
They've got valve systems and stuff like that. Yeah. So like if you were to be sitting by a well that they were turning on to production, and you see the flare stack that's right there, you know exactly when they turn that well onto production, because that flare stack just goes crazy.
Oh.
Yep. So the well's producing now. And after a period of time, it basically has a natural pressure that allows that well to naturally produce for a period of time, because again, it's been sitting under that natural pressure. Then you turn it over into artificial lift. So depending on what type of artificial lift you use, determines what type of chemical and how you introduce the chemical to the well. So like I said, biocides are very common, scale inhibitors, corrosion inhibitors, a lot of surfactants, H2S scavengers, halide inhibitors, which is like the salt that's in the produced water. Again, gums up the well, especially in North Dakota. They call it super saturated, that produced water. Just a tremendous amount of salt that's in that produced water. So then you got to clear up the salt. So yeah, lots of different chemicals in that process. We have data that shows that we've allowed the production tubing to be in a well for 3+ years, and that allows that well to produce over 3 years versus having to work over the well, replace the production tubing. The well's offline for a period of time, so you're not producing it and not getting any money from the production. The workover rig costs a lot of money. The new production tubing that you put in the well costs a lot of money. So an insurance chemical program allows you to extend the life of the well, basically.
That makes sense.
This is not simple stuff to explain ever.
There's a lot that goes into it. Yeah,
of course.
It's a pretty important step. So,
all right, let's get out of the weeds here, because there's just so much vocabulary to pick up on. You just name something, and I'm like, that's an episode we can just do right there.
I know, me too.
Like that, you know? But let's move on to like midstream stuff, perhaps. Which I don't even know how to transition. Literally, like they collect an upstream. You collect all this oil. Where does it go? In the batteries? Barrels, literal barrels.
So yeah, basically it goes into like surface storage tanks, 400 barrel upright tanks that, so the production comes out of the well and it goes into a treater. That treater basically separates the produced water from the oil from the gas. Gas comes off the top, oil comes off the middle, and water comes off the bottom, goes into either storage tanks that are on the individual well site or into a gas gathering system, like I mentioned, which is part of what we do on the midstream side, which, full disclosure, I don't do a whole lot on the midstream side, so I can explain it on a very midstream for dummies level, but that's about it. So
Yeah, it's funny. I never realized like I can't even like picture the steps after, and I've seen this stuff in person too. When I'm like, I'm looking at it. I don't really know what I'm looking at. But yeah, why don't you give us that Midstream for Dummies Chemicals 101?
Okay. So we talked about H2S. We talked about corrosion inhibitors and scale inhibitors. So it's not uncommon that when the production, those three phases of production, gas, oil, and water, go into that treater, there's not a complete clean break or separation of those three phases, right? So in the gas phase, a lot of time there's some entrained water in that gas phase, okay? We talked about water is a big driver of corrosion. Water has that scale tendency, total dissolved solids present. And so even in the gas gathering system, there's H2S problems, there's scale problems, there's corrosion problems because there's a little bit of water in there, right? So you need to address those problems with chemicals to combat that specific issue. So H2S scavengers is a good example.
Yeah, we've never talked about that on a show. So
Okay.
why don't you break down what scavengers are in general? Because I just pictured like these little machines that eat poison.
So they break the H2S molecule, so hydrogen and sulfide, right? So there's left hydrogen just goes in the gas phase, and that's not a problem. The sulfide has to settle out somewhere. So when that gas production goes into the gas plant, I think it's called a first stage separator that basically separates again some of the water that's gone, that's part of that gathering system. And then anything that's entrained in that water, maybe some total dissolved solids, maybe the sulfide that's been separated from your H2S scavenging process. And so that's basically what an H2S scavenger does. It removes the H2S and allows you to sell your gas to the market, basically.
Cool.
Yeah. Not a whole lot to it other than that.
Is there a way to keep the hydrogen?
I think the hydrogen stays, in that gas phase.
And how is it captured?
I think
hydrogen's valuable.
I think it just goes through the gas processing system. Like, I think there's 30 some types of different gases that are processed in a gas plant, at least like up in the Bakken. So there's light ends, there's natural gas liquids that like the propanes and butanes and stuff like that. And then again, lots of other light end types of gases that go into a downstream part of after we separate the gases in our gas plant, the light ends go into a pipeline that basically get taken to market and used for various purposes.
All right.
I feel like we need someone on about a gas plant because that's fascinating how different gases just can go different places.
Yeah. And again, that is so far from my area of expertise. I probably have already said something that's wrong. So
yeah, it's a lot. I mean, that all that oil and gas wants to be underground, and we take it out, and it's like, all right, here you go. You want some of this, and it's like, salt, chemicals, bacteria. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And we've slowly just been like checking the list of like how to fix all these things, and like what are like some unsolved things, or what are some things that we're hoping to see to make this step even easier. I mean, we've been getting this stuff out the ground for 100 years, and we're still trying to check all these boxes.
So, I mean, there's constant evolution in the industry, right? Like I talked about frack fluids, frack designs. From a logistics standpoint, I think there's a lot of things being done right now that are just different than what's traditionally being done. Like the products that are actually hauled to and delivered to the frack site. Proppant is a good example. They're actually like piping sand to the frack site versus like trucking it in, and like the sandboxes that you probably see going up and down the road all the time. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of opportunity to become more efficient, more productive, safer, and cheaper. And that will never change. Like it's a constant like evolution
learning
of things.
process. Yeah.
Like what we're doing right now. I'll give you a quick
sales pitch.
Not a sales pitch, but a teaser on a project that we're working on.
Of course.
So just accessing effective oil and gas chemicals. The traditional process, the current process is a producer sends out an RFP to the various chemical companies and says, okay, here's our wells, here's the number of wells, here's the type of artificial lift, here's the production profile, here's the issues that we may experience, and so we need chemicals to help combat these issues. And this is on the production chemical side. That process takes several months. It like a ton of resources, production engineers and those engineers, managers and the chemical companies and the chemists and the scientists and all these different people are involved in trying to provide an effective solution for that producer and their wells. And it's just a very robust, expensive process that takes a long time. I think the average like turnover time of chemical service providers is 2 to 3 years. So imagine all those resources every 2 to 3 years and all that money that's being spent. Because what happens is and I'll probably get some flack for saying this, but the salesperson comes in, the chemical salesperson, and says, oh, we've got the best chemicals out there. We're going to solve all your problems. We've got the best service. And then in the honeymoon phase, as we call it, the first 6 months, they do a great job. And then the service starts to die off. And, then the producer's like, well, what happened here? We were promised the world and we're not receiving what we were promised. And so they enter into the same process in another 2 to 3 years. And so we're developing a process that gives producers access to effective chemicals and providing enough data that the producer can make the decision from a number of different chemical manufacturers, chemical distributors, to basically try to circumvent that process or give the producer the option to circumvent that standard process, save some money, reallocate their resources to something else like producing their wells more efficiently, and letting the chemicals sell themselves rather than the fancy salesperson that, tries to sweep them off their feet. So there's different ways kind of logistically and giving people access to what they're looking for.
I feel like that is a great use case for AI.
There it is.
There may or may not be some of that integrated into this process.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's super helpful.
If you're not constantly innovating, you're going to get
dying.
Just bulldozed over in this industry, which is kind of scary because there's a lot of smart people in this industry, a lot of good engineers that have a lot of really good ideas. And, all those engineers need is someone to try out what they've developed or what they've invented or whatever, and actually prove out the concept in the field. In our space, we call it, bench testing only does so much. You need actual field trials of getting that chemicals down into the well and then measuring the performance of those chemicals, because saying something or testing it on a bench in a perfect environment just isn't realistic in this industry. I mean, when you're talking in North Dakota, on the surface, it's minus 50 degrees. And then that chemistry gets down into the well. That's, 250 degrees. And it's like, you have to do the testing to cover all of those bases to know that you have a good, strong chemical. So a lot of smart people. And if you're not finding ways to be better and faster and more efficient, you're not going to last very long.
That pretty much applies to anything.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
All right. Well, that wraps up our chemistry jargon. But let's finish up with, why you're here. You're in Houston right now. You're from Colorado. You spend time in North Dakota as well. What are you doing here in Houston, and what's work like in Denver off-site?
Yeah, so I'm attending this podcast called Collide. Have you heard of it? It's pretty well known. No, so we kind of are restructuring our business. So we're doing a lot of vertical integration. We're kind of leveraging our skill sets in different areas that we know we can excel at, or we've learned to excel at over the years, the last 13 years in business. And so we're revisiting how we source good, effective chemicals and how we collaborate with chemical manufacturers or R&D companies or scientists or the specialists that maybe have a chemical that works in a different industry that can work very well in this industry. They just have never considered it. And so we built our company off of partnerships and long-standing relationships, right? So we're looking to do that moving forward as well. And so we're meeting with a lot of folks that have really good ideas and may not have an avenue to take those products or that idea to the market. So lots of those types of meetings this week. But we're also kind of strengthening some relationships with some existing groups that we've worked with for a very long time and had a mutually beneficial relationship with, and finding ways to team up and, develop that strength in numbers kind of approach, right? The 1 + 1 = 3 model. Because we've got customers that we think that we've built a strong enough reputation with and strong enough foundation as a company that we can expand on that and team up with people that we have used as a vendor standpoint. But it's like, let's team up. Why do we need to be a completely separate entity? Let's team up here and tackle the market more aggressively and go in, stacked hands to these companies and say, we're now one unit. You really like what we're doing separately, but now we're together and we can be even stronger to provide more solutions for you and be more effective and strengthen the relationship that we've built over the years. So, from a high level, that's what we're doing this week in Houston, and it's been a great trip. I think that there's a lot of openness to the collaboration stuff because the competition is so great that it's like, if you don't team up with some of the groups that you've worked with and work together on some things, that you might both separately not be as strong, but together you'll win. And we're winners.
I love that mindset. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. And now you're back in Colorado. How many years has it been? Been like a while, or?
Since I've been back in Colorado. Yeah. So I moved back in like late 2015. So I was in Williston for about 2 years.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah. The sales pitch to get me to go up there was like, 6 months, probably be able to move back to Colorado. And just like everything, it's not quite what you originally planned, and you kind of adapt and improvise. So 2 years later, I was back in Colorado, which is where I'm from. Grew up in Morrison, right by Red Rocks, and love Colorado for the most part. It's changed quite a bit, just like Houston probably has. But we've got a little slice of heaven with some horse property and a few acres and stuff that allows us to feel like we're not in the hustle and bustle quite as much when we get back home. So,
that's
all right.
Nice.
I think that'll do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.